He who despises the wisdom of the elders will surely stumble into a ditch of his own arrogance. This is an Igbo proverb that carried deep meaning in Omuaka, a small village nested beside the vast and ancient Amadi forest. The elders often shared it during the Moonlight Tales gathering, warning the young ones about the consequences of arrogance and disrespect for traditions, as they often told this through many stories that carried heavy life lessons. A young boy in the village who was born there and a native of that land, called Nnamdi, was a 16 years old boy who often dismissed their words and waved his hand. Nnamdi was a village troublemaker. His cleverness and his energy, which would have brought pride to his home, were instead a constant source of headache. He chased chickens through the market, tipped over pots of palm oil, and mocked the spirits through the sacred festivals. Why should I fear stories meant to frighten little children? He often boasted to his friends, Chike and Obinna, as they sat by the stream. But Nnamdi, Chike cautioned, you shouldn't speak lightly of the spirits. My grandmother said that the forests do not take insults kindly. Spirits, Nnamdi huffed, skipping the pebble across the water. If they are so powerful, why haven't they shown themselves? It's all tales that should keep us in line. Watch, I'll prove it to you. But his friends were looking at him as if he had grown two horns. Obinna told him, I remember the story my father used to tell me about a certain man named Anememe who said that there was no spirits, but later on, Anememe became the lesson that was shared as he later faced the consequences of his evil actions. But Nnamdi laughed it off, saying that that story was also an unfortunate incident that happened to him, but the elders of the land wanted to use it to scare them. That is all a lie. That night, under the cover of darkness, Nnamdi hatched a plan. The next day was Iriji, a New Yam festival, when the villagers offered their first yam to Allah, the god of the earth, and their ancestors. The sacred yam was laid in a carved wooden tray and placed before the shrine at the edge of Amadi forest. Nnamdi watched until the elders were deep in prayers. With Chike and Obinnas reluctantly following him, he crept up at the shrine and switched the sacred yam with wild, inedible ones as he collected it earlier. The boys stopped their laughter and they slipped away unnoticed. When the priests completed the ritual and broke the yam for their communal feast, they were horrified to find the yam rotten. This is a bad omen, said Ezembanefu, the oldest priest, his voice trembling. Someone has defiled the offerings. The gods will not be pleased. The gods are very angry. The villagers murmured in fear, but Nnamdi, hiding among the crowd, suppressed a laugh. That night, as Nnamdi laid in bed, he was awoken by a strange noise, a low rhythmic drumming that seemed to come from Amadi's forest. He sat up, his heart pounding, as sweat trickled down his face. But as he peered outside, the village was quiet, so he shrugged it off and went back to sleep. Maybe it's just my imaginations. After all these plenty village stories, somebody just tends to fear at every slightest sound. In fact, I'll stop attending all these moonlight folk tales self. The next morning, Nnamdi told Chike and Obinna about the noise. Maybe it's the spirit that is calling you, Chike said as his face paled as he feared that very soon he would start to face the consequences of following Nnamdi. Nonsense. That's why I don't like telling you anything. See now, Something that would have laughed about it, you have made a big deal out of it. Nnamdi replied angry, though the chill still ran down his spine as he was trying to convince himself so hard that the sound he heard was nothing. It's probably just the wind. I probably woke up from sleep thinking too much self. Unwilling to let the fear control him, Nnamdi decided to challenge the spirits again. The villagers were preparing for Ochudo, the festival of peace, which requires strict observance of silence in the evenings. But Nnamdi, armed with his flute, began playing loudly as the elders meditated near the shrine. Mazen Banefo stood up and pointed the staff at Nnamdi. "You this boy, you mock the gods again. Do you even fear their routes?" Nnamdi said, "I fear no gods," he retorted, walking away as the elders shook their head. Nnamdi still didn't believe that the gods could do anything to him, as he thought he was the most superior and with his stubbornness he could overcome anything. That night, the drumming returned, louder this time. Nnamdi tried to ignore it, but the sound seemed to slip through his bones. "Who is there?" he called out, stepping outside, but only the wind answered. Nnamdi, as before, shrugged it off. On the third night, Nnamdi's defiance reached its peak. He decided to venture into Amadi Forest, determined to prove that there were no spirits. Armed with a lantern and his bravado, he made his way to the forest. "Nnamdi, don't do this," Chike pleaded, standing at the edge of the forest, even regretting how he let Nnamdi convince him to come out from his house at the dead of the night. "You don't need to go with me. Stay here if you are scared," Nnamdi said, smirking. "After all, there are nothing like spirits. We are just being told so that we could all be kept in place and so that fear can be ruling us." As he ventured deeper alone this time, the air grew colder. The trees seemed to close in, their branches twisting like claws. Suddenly, his lamp flickered and went out. "Hey! I'm finished though," Nnamdi thought suddenly. "Nnamdi," a voice whispered, low and chilling. He froze. "Who is there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. He was trying so hard to convince himself that maybe it is Chike that is playing tricks on him. Out of the shadows emerged figures cloaked in the mist, their faces glowing faintly in the dark. They were spirits of the forest, their eyes piercing and unyielding. "You mocked us," one of them said, as the voice sounded like rustling leaves. "You've defied the sacred rituals. Now you must pay." Nnamdi fell to his knees, trembling. I didn't mean any harm. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to know that if you people really existed," he stammered. "A child who refuses to listen," another spirit said, "will carry the weight of their disrespect." When Nnamdi stumbled out of the forest at the dawn, he was pale and shaking. The villagers gathered around him, grasping at the sight. His once luscious hair had turned white. His eyes were haunted. "What happened?" his mother cried, clutching him. They spoke to me," Nnamdi whispered. "The spirits, they are real." All the villagers looked at him, stunned. "Hey, what did this boy go to do? This boy has put all of us in deep danger." Villagers whispered around themselves, scared of what the spirit's next action would be. From that day, Nnamdi was plagued by whispers and visions. He saw shadows where there were none. At night, the drumming filled his ears. He could not stop. He couldn't sleep, or neither could he eat. Despite all this, Nnamdi sought the counsel of Dibia Akonna. the village priestess. The spirits are energy, Akonna said, her voice heavy with sorrow. You must make amends, not just to them, but to your people. Only through humility and service can you be free. Nnamdi wept as he still had his white hair that had marked a significant beginning for him. The villagers feared coming close to him as they always remembered their folk tale that said that the spirit giving somebody white hair is a mark of separation and everybody should go far from him. The only person that ever dared to come close to him was his mother, as the villagers saw that as a symbol of provoking the gods. Nnamdi wept and begged for guidance. Akonna instructed him to fast for 7 days and offer 7 yams to the shrine. More importantly, he had to earn the forgiveness of the villagers, as that was the key to let the gods forgive him also. With a renewed heart, Nnamdi began his penance. He repaired broken fences, fetched water for the elders, and helped the women in the market. Slowly, the villagers began to forgive him, though the shadows still lingered. On the 7th night, Nnamdi returned to the forest, carrying the yams for the spirit. He knelt down before an iroko tree and prayed, his tears streaming down his eyes. Spirits of the forest, I am sorry for my foolishness. I have learned my lessons. Please forgive me. The forest fell silent, and then the spirits appeared once more. A stubborn person has understood, one of them said. You have shown humility and wisdom. Go in peace, but never forget these lessons. From that day on, Nnamdi was a different person. He respected the traditions of his people and became a source of wisdom for younger generations. And whenever he heard the faint sounds of drumming in the distance, he would bow his head and whisper a prayer, grateful for the second chance that the spirits had given him. What are the lessons to learn from these stories? The proverb at the beginning of this story teaches that disregarding the wisdom of the elders can lead to grave consequences. Nnamdi's initial dismissal of the village traditions and belief led to his suffering. So, it is important that we learn the value of respecting our cultural heritage, our elders, and also their guidance. It also showed that every action has consequences, so we must also be careful of how we act, knowing that all actions has good or bad consequences.